Hey, She-Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunswick, and our guest today is absolutely on fire. She is up there in like the top honors, like honorable people. Wait, well, I mean, she is an honorable person, but like, okay. Well, as a podcast host, you get access to all these people that normally would not talk to you. And so today we have Dr. Monika Buerger on. And obviously, I fangirled a little bit, right? Stumbling over my words in just even introducing her. She's incredible. One thing that because I've only ever seen her in a speaking mode, where she's delivering to an audience. Holy cow. Besides incredibly intelligent, this is, even though she is a chiropractor and like amazingly smart about the brain, this episode is for really everyone. This is going to help with just like consciousness. It's a continuation of conversation around our fears and evolving as humans. So beyond just absolutely brilliant, she's really, really kind. And I don't mean that as a surprise, but just like there was just a really cool personality. Also, sometimes really smart people, they tend to lack in personality. Not Monika. She was very, very awesome. Okay, so we are going to kind of get right into it because this is a jam-packed episode. Let's start with reading a listener highlight, though. This one is titled Dynamite. From Dr. Rachel, and it says, grateful for this rock star, doc, mama, and powerhouse lady for sharing her stories and life in such an open and fun way. It's the real deal for the ins and outs of a chiro lady's life. If you ever feel alone in your journey, give her a listen to remember how connected we are. Thanks for slaying, Dr. Lauryn. I love that because, like, in the geekiest way, part of my learning to have more empathy for those that have been with me for a while, that this is something I've been working on for 2 years. And that's been one of the biggest things is seeing how connected we all are and how similar all of our struggles are. So yeah, thanks Dr. Rachel for seeing that. Okay, so let's talk about Dr. Monika Buerger. So Dr. Buerger graduated from Life Chiropractic College West in 1991. She also has an undergraduate degree in exercise physiology from California State University, Fresno. She has enjoyed extensive postgraduate training in the areas of neurodevelopment, functional neurology, neuronutrition, and functional medicine. She currently has a private family practice in Ammon, Idaho, that is dedicated to serving those with neurodevelopmental challenges, neurodegenerative disorders, and chronic health issues. She is the pioneer in the chiropractic profession when it comes to working with children that have neurosensory and neurodevelopmental disorders. She is a contributing author to the textbook Pediatric Chiropractic Volume 1 and Volume 2, with chapters on pediatric history and physical exam, neurodevelopmental disorders, and sensory processing disorder. She has been lecturing nationally and internationally for over 20 years and is the founder of the Intersect for Life educational seminars, mentoring, and online learning academy with various CE classes focusing on functional neurology, neurodevelopment, methylation biochemistry, and functional nutrition. She also has collaborated with Dr. Heidi Havik on bringing online CE classes and mentorship programs to chiropractors with Havik Buerger seminars. Her newest exciting adventure is her Developing Mind certification and CE program in childhood and adolescent neurodevelopment, where she has brought 30 years of research, teaching, and clinical experience into one incredible program. And today, when I asked her, I said, what do you want to talk about? She said, I want to talk about slaying the amygdala. And as a chiropractor, obviously I knew what the amygdala was. But just for your sake, I went research, like, what the heck is the amygdala? Oh, it's our fear center. And I was like, oh yeah, let's do this. So let's pray and jump into just a really great conversation. Dear God, thank you so much for people who are interested in research and how things work. thank you for the work that they do. Bless it and their findings so that it can continue to shape the world and how we understand the beautiful creation of the brain. You know, when we talk about how little control we feel we have, how much we understand, I truly believe in the work that she and other researchers do in helping us understand, and that is the keystone to kind of unlocking purpose and true love and empathy towards others and connection with ourselves, and realizing how connected we all are. Like, you created this just web of love and innate intelligence from one person to the other. So in your name we pray, amen. All right, crew, here is Dr. Monika Buerger and me slaying the amygdala. Okay, well, welcome to the show, Dr. Monika.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you don't need to worry about offending me. It takes a lot. But like, have you ever listened to the Sheslays podcast?
I've listened to snippets, but I am going to be honest. I did after you asked me to be on the show.
All right. So you kind of know what you're in for, type of thing.
I love it. I was like, this is my kind of gal.
Yeah, you've already been warned that I may accidentally interrupt you, and I've already apologized. Like, I respectfully never intend to, but I just don't trust my brain to remember if I have got a good question.
I love your enthusiasm.
Yeah, thanks. So another question I didn't warn you I was going to ask, but I am getting, and it's okay if you don't know the answer. Like, I'm sure that do you call yourself, are you a researcher? Is it okay? Like a chiropractic researcher? What do you refer to yourself as?
I refer a hodgepodge. What about hodgepodge? What do you think?
So as a hodgepodge person, you probably feel very uncomfortable with, I might ask a question you don't know the answer to, but have you ever heard of the Enneagram? And do you know what you are?
No, I haven't, but what am I?
I don't know. So
I thought you had
by the end of the episode, I may have figured it out. So it's kind of becoming a running joke that I have a very small obsession with the Enneagram. It is a very old, like, personality profile, basically. And it's this idea that there are 9 different types of people. And it's very complicated. So it's like, it's one of the oldest ones because it's very complicated because it doesn't just put people in these boxes. The reason I ask right away, well, it's twofold. One, because I always end up interrupting people going, I'm sorry, do you know your Enneagram? Because they'll say something that's very like typical of a certain person or like number.
Okay.
But it is based on not behavior, but motivations and fears. So with our conversation today about
I get it.
I was like, I needed to know just right off the bat. Okay. So don't worry
Got it. I did do the number thing though. Like, you take your birthday and everything and then you look at,
What's that? What's your numbers?
I am a 41. So I'm a 6 as far as personality type.
Okay.
So I'm complex. I'm very, it's not a common one and I'm complex. So, hey. So I guess I'm a hodgepodge of complex.
Yeah. It was funny. I was just talking to a patient this morning about astrology and like, I don't know, here's where I'm at on the hippy dippy scale. I love crystals. I love essential oils, but I haven't necessarily, and I have sage, and I will sage the crap out of my space when I'm like, there's some negative energy in here. But I haven't gotten to the point of like doing full moon ceremonies or putting my crystals in the moonlight. Now that doesn't mean I'm not going to move there, but like, so when it comes to astrology, I'm kind of in the like, I read the horoscopes, but I don't like base my life on them. And I was talking to a patient because he's really into astrology. And he's like, when's your birthday? Because he's like, oh, well, I'm a Cancer. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And as a doctor, like cancer is a bad thing. Like, and he's like, oh, you're a Libra. And I'm like, no, actually, I do not identify as a Libra. And I've talked with an astrologist before who was like, oh, well, it depends not just on the date you were born, but like the location and the time. And so she like pulled out this like big stars mapping chart and she's like, oh, you're actually a Leo. And I was like, now that I can get behind.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big difference, but yeah,
There's a big difference. But you know what? Guess what? I was born on a full moon.
You were. That's got to mean something.
Yeah.
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 My youngest was born on a full moon and born in the call. So she was a home birth and she came out in the sack.
Well, that's special juju right there.
That is, yeah. She's kind of like, we were told she's supposed to be, there's like all this, like they're called call bearers, and it's like 1 in 800,000 births and like all this stuff. And like, so like, it's funny, you read about them and it's like, oh, they'll be able to like naturally find water and like know when the crops are ripe. And like, there's all this stuff. She's a little shit. I don't know. I don't know. But all that stuff must be coming down the pipeline.
How old is she?
6.
Oh yeah. You got.
Yeah. But she's a fire sign. Like that kid is, she's going to change the world.
There you go. When was she born?
November 27th.
She's November. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm an Aries on a full moon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, hey,
So
now that we've talked about all the woo-woo. All right. So I have questions.
Yes.
Before we jump into the amygdala, so I just to give the listeners a little heads up, I reached out and I was like, all right, one of the things I try and avoid as much as possible when I have somebody at your caliber who's like just used to speaking, you're just, you could go on a stage right now in a minute's notice and give an hour-long presentation, I'm assuming. So I like to kind of like take you out of those like this is what I've talked to most about. This is what most people want me on their podcast to talk about. And I was like, I'd actually love to talk about anything other than that you're on fire about. And you were like, I want to slay the amygdala. And I'm like, oh crap, what's the amygdala?
That fear monger. It's the fear monger.
Yeah. So, I have a lot of non-chiropractors who do listen to the podcast, although it's most. And then there's also students who maybe they're currently listening and people I've been in practice 11 years. So, if I ask questions, of course I know, because I'm a doctor, I know what the amygdala is, but I'll just be playing the role of the person who doesn't know much about the brain today. But how did you get into, give me the 411 on how you really got into studying the brain and how you've gotten to this point?
Oh, okay. So truth be told, here's the deal, WAP. Now, okay, should I be like one of those shows where you start at one point and then you go back and then you go forward again and back and confuse everybody? Or should I just?
You can do that. I am all over that. The listeners are very used to trying to follow my stream of thought. Okay. Don't worry. I believe in them. They've got this.
Okay, so here's the deal. I remember way back. I've been in practice 30 years, okay? But I swear I'm still 24, but that's not really the truth. So I remember it back in high school and my early college days when I was going to Fresno State. I remember, I can still picture my stuff. I was talking to a teen gal in my practice yesterday about this. I can still picture myself in my bedroom at my parents' house, and this ta-da thought in my head was like, I love my parents to death. I absolutely adore them. I would do anything for them. But they had a hard life because they grew up in Germany in World War II, and they saw horrific things that we can't even imagine. Mm-hmm. And they lost everything. They were put in camps after the war. I mean, they had a really tough life. But I remember how fearful they were of things. And I remember the way they would be so afraid of money, of being poor all the time, anyway. And I remember thinking, I am not going to do that when I get older. I am not going to follow that pattern. So long story short, fast forward, now what I know about this dang, can we curse on this show?
Yes, it's a curse-friendly show.
It's okay. Okay, thank you. About that amygdala, that is your rate limiting factor in life. That is your fear monger. That is going to hold you back from being your authentic self. Because once we have an experience, it embeds, it's part of our, what we call our limbic system, our emotional part of our brain. And we make as human beings, we make every decision in life coming from an emotional core. But now, fast forward, doing the work that I do and looking at from preconception care to prenatal care and how the thoughts, the reactions, the stress patterns, everything that we enter into this world with is hand-me-downed from, it's called intergenerational inheritance. It's handed down through our DNA from our ancestors for up to 14 generations back.
Oh, crap. So that's a lot of generations.
That's a lot of freaking generations. So you see where I'm going with more of my parents, what they went through. Yeah. So that fear, that constant fear base of not being enough as a human being, never being enough, never having enough, never doing enough, never being enough. And it's this patterning, right? But if we become mindful of that, if we can break that pattern. That's the cool part, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So nobody freak out. Yeah. Nobody freak out, nobody fear. But it's being mindful. It's being able to step back and look at these situations and say, why am I reacting to this situation in that way? Like, what is that core sense of fear that's having me react that way? You with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for those of you out there that are students or in practice or not chiropractors, but in another profession or whatever, if you become mindful of the way you react to things, you can break that pattern and you can be freaking free. I didn't say the F word all the way. Yes, I saved the day. Not yet, anyway. But you can become mindful of this and you can say, you know what? That is not my baggage. That's not my baggage. Okay. You can care, but you don't have to carry other people's loads and stressors. And you can step back and say, you know what? That was the way so-and-so reacted, or my family grew up, or I was taught, there's a lot of people right now going through, healer burnout, through faith crisis. Faith. I mean, this.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean by faith crisis?
Well, particularly over this last year. Look, we've all been through a shitstorm, right? And we're still trying.
Amygdala has been strong the last year.
Okay, so basically, everybody, for the most part, have been driven into their amygdala.
Okay, explain what the amygdala is.
Okay,
and its function in the body.
So the amygdala is your sense of fear, and it reacts to your environment. So if we perceive our environment as fear-based, it takes over.
So does fight or flight?
Yes.
So does fight or flight stimulate the amygdala? Like, is that the first or it's a gland, right? What is it?
It's a part of your brain. Okay. It's an area in the brain.
So that is the very first step inside of our body of going into fight or flight, or is there
Yeah. Okay. So it drives us into fight, flight, freeze, or fear. We as human beings, think of an animal. If it feels threatened, its first response is to survive, right? Not to be eaten by the tiger or hunted down or whatever. Humans are the same thing. Our whole basis of existence is about survival.
So that's how it serves us. Is it's kept us alive.
Right.
Well, so obviously a deer has an amygdala. Do you know that? Like, we've got to know that, right?
But as a human, that sense of the brain doesn't distinguish what's real and what's not. It has no idea. It doesn't know what a real situation is, which versus a made up situation in our head. But we are pre-programmed via our ancestors' experiences to respond either in a calm way, a consciousness on a conscious level as humans. That what makes us conscious, what gives us consciousness, what makes us human and being able to feel and relate to others. That's the higher part of the brain. It's called the prefrontal cortex. It has to be engaged to keep the amygdala quiet. It shuts up the amygdala.
So the prefrontal cortex is stronger than the amygdala, so it's capable.
We want it to be. We want it to
be. Yeah.
It can be. We want it to be. And by the way, for you chiropractors out there, we do know that the chiropractic adjustment affects the prefrontal cortex. Just saying. Okay? Just saying. So we want that dude, that executive functioning part of the brain, the CEO guy, to be on board. We want him on his job, right? Right?
Yeah.
So that when we get spun up about something, when we have an experience or even are thinking about something, we don't go back and fall back on that old memory pattern of something that happened to us in the past or happened to our parents, or that's the way our parents reacted or our grandparents reacted. We can come from a whole brain perspective. We can have that executive functioning dude on board and saying, you know what? You fear monger, you amygdala, you negative Nally, you bully dude of your brain, you shut the fuck up. Oop.
I knew it was going to happen. It was inevitable.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry. But this is not a real situation. You do not have to respond like you were programmed to respond. Are you with me?
I am totally with you. Does the amygdala store memories?
Well, it's a brother and sister relationship with another part of the brain, another emotional part of the brain called the hippocampus. So those two dudes work together, and the hippocampus stores the memory. So okay, all right. Here's a scenario. I grew up not with a lot of money, right? My parents worked really hard, coming over here from another country and starting over and everything. So our mantra was, you are going to have to work. If you don't, you're a slacker. You're not good enough, right? You're slacking off, right?
Lazy.
Oh my God, go on vacation. Are you kidding? That is so irresponsible. You're going to work, but you're never going to have enough money because you just aren't. Okay. You see where I'm going? Yeah. So you can live in that paradigm, or you can say, wait a minute. I can work hard to go to school and make something of myself and to have a passion and so forth. And I don't have to kill myself. And I don't have to be so scared of losing everything. Because otherwise you're just living in a constant fear state, right?
Yeah. And so is it the consciousness? So okay, so I'm trying to think of so the prefrontal cortex has the capacity to tell the amygdala to shut
the fuck up.
So when you have people, so let's just take, a large group of people for the last year. Who are very comfortable. They're not consciously aware that they are being, their fear is driving. Yeah, exactly. They're very, they don't want to be any different. They're continuing to consume the news like that as somehow their comfort zone, but they're living in this vibration of fear. The amygdala is just is their prefrontal cortex acting different?
Yes, it's flipped off. It's not engaged. That's exactly where we are now as humans. So many of us, right? So here's the deal, Wap. So, okay, I'm going to use a couple examples. One, if you're in practice or if you're in a business or something, one of my bad mantras was as chiropractors, lots of times we get out and we're programmed to think that you have to see 556 million people a day, otherwise you're not successful and you're going to go broke. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just throwing this out there. Okay, I'm coming from that place of heart of hey, I've been there, done that, right? Okay, and so if you're not seeing that many, you're not successful. You're not going to have financial security. That whole freaking mantra in your head, right? And then let's say right now is a good example because I was practicing in California for 18 years and now I've been out in Idaho for over 12 years. But let's say you have a cluster of people moving away from you and a bunch of people dropping out of practice or COVID hits, okay? Or something like that. And you, let's say, have a lot of families say, I'm moving out of the area, I'm not coming in and everything. You can flip right into that emotional part of your brain because you're going back to that patterning. Yep, see, you know what? You are not good enough. You are going to go broke. You are going to have to work forever. You see where I'm going with that?
Oh, 1000%.
Okay. Now you brought up consciousness. What is consciousness? What makes us human? That is that prefrontal cortex, that executive functioning part of the brain. That is living in a conscious, mindful state. So okay, pop quiz. Ha, turning the tables on you. Pop quiz. Okay, ready? Don't stress. Okay. Have you ever tried to be reasonable or rational in the middle of a heated argument with somebody, like your spouse?
Yes. And
does that work?
No. So here's an example of yesterday. I was very frustrated with my husband. We're not necessarily fighting, but we're going over a tiff. And I had to go back to work and I said, listen, I am very frustrated with you. I understand we have a difference of opinion. I have to go to work. And when I come home, we'll be fine. I love you, but I don't want to talk to you because I'm frustrated right now. So that's how I'm like a toddler being like, pointing a finger, being like, I am doing my best to be good, but I'm very angry.
And so if he would have tried to come back and try to reason with you at that time, what would have happened?
I probably would have been like, not what I want.
Okay. So you're stuck in that emotional part of your brain. The amygdala is taken over, but you were still consciously aware that if I don't leave, something worse is going to happen. I need to step away.
You also see my behavior. Like it was like, I could see you are acting irrational right now. Like I can say that about myself, though he can't say it about me. No, but like,
exactly.
Okay. You're kind of like feeling a lot of emotions right now and that aren't really matching the severity of the situation. And so like, yes, there was this part of my brain that was observing me and going like, what's going on right now? Like, you must be really stressed because you are blowing this way out of proportion, but you don't know how to like save your ego and going like, I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. So it was like, I'm just going to like walk you out of this gently.
But see, that's what's so freaking cool. Your adaptability in life, you are a healthy, that's where we need to be as loving, compassionate, conscious human beings. So, but if you can't walk yourself out of that and you get stuck in that fear monger, it takes over and you become paralyzed. Let's say you have a fear of elevators or a fear of being successful or a fear of whatever, you will avoid that, right? You would avoid it. But if you can bring that consciousness on board, you can say, wait a minute, I need to walk out of that situation. I think this over. I need to realize, okay, I don't need to say that. I don't need to be fearful of that. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to get on an elevator and let's see how that experience feels. Oh, okay, I lived. It was a little anxiety because that amygdala is anxiety. Amygdala equals anxiety.
Okay, that was one of my questions is like, and is the amygdala also depression or is that?
It can be. It can be PTSD, depression, everything. So think about where people have been, back to where you were talking about, where have people been driven this last year?
Fear, depression, isolation.
So because that fear of if I walk outside and I look at somebody, I'm going to kill them or they're going to kill me. Okay. So you have kind of like half of the population that are going, wait a minute, this doesn't have to be that way. You can have some sense of reality. And then, but that half the population might look at the other half saying, what is wrong with you? Why are you you're not behaving in a rational manner. But you've got to understand that's where they're living right now. That's where they're programmed. It's hard to get out of that.
Yeah. And it is hard. So like, because, so if you're functioning from the amygdala, mostly your prefrontal cortex, which is like, is that more your more logical self? Is that like
your impulse control, your reasoning, your rational being, your social engagement skills, being able to engage with people on a human conscious level.
Yep. And so like, it's one of those things where when you do look at the last year, it's, we don't need to make a political standpoint of like, but things were not handled. They could have been handled very differently. And that's not to say that like, we're going like, oh, we shouldn't be taking this serious or not. It's none of that. It's just saying like a lot of the decisions people are just like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And it's because, because the people in charge are using the amygdala to make decisions instead of like, okay, so let's look at the stats. Let's figure out what is a logical conclusion from this. And like, yeah, but how do you get to switch?
So I think we have, and I think one of the messages is, let's try to come from a place of love and compassion towards others.
In the brain.
What's that?
Where does love and compassion live in the brain?
Love and compassion is when we can have a balance, when all parts of the brain are engaged and on board, and we're not driven into this fear monger, emotional limbic part of the brain. And we can be reasonable, rational, and come from and have and feel. A lot of people can't feel love or joy. And it's very sad right now. They can't feel those feelings because their only thing they can feel is that anxiety and that fear and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so
it's like a boardroom of the brain where it's like, it's creating a space for like, okay, amygdala, would you like to voice your concerns?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, great. Now it's your turn to stop talking. And next, like,
that's exactly what we need to do. Mm-hmm. I call that the brain bully, and then you have a brain buddy. Okay. So when your brain bully, your amygdala starts taking over. You are not good. You are less than. You're a failure. If you walk outside, you're going to be dead. Those things, those negative nallies, that constant, driving you into this dark space, when that starts to creep up, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to say, whoa, dude, all right, you've expressed yourself way too much over this last month or year or whatever. Yep. Okay, it's time for you to park it. All right. I need my brain buddy back on board. Okay, that's pretty much your prefrontal cortex. Okay, where's my reasonable brain buddy? Okay, all right. Now let's really think this over, Monika. So you had 10 families that are moving out of the state, and you're not going to go broke. You are not a failure. You are not less than. That doesn't mean you're going to have to work till you're 95 and be half dead. That's not your reality. That was other people's reality or perceptions of you and your life. Mm-hmm. All right. This is your reality. Hey, yeah. All right. That might suck for a little while, but you know what? Maybe it's a chance for my body to rest and reboot, and then, reformulate your practice for lower, there's ways to figure that. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the same, and this, by the way, the cool thing about this is, as my life has evolved since this teen aha moment, and back then I didn't know that those parts of the brain, and I didn't understand where this was coming from. Right. And now this is what I teach on, right? Fast forward 35 years later. The cool part is I truly believe that we go through experiences, and we, at the time, they may not seem as blessings or great experiences, but I think it's part of our learning and what maybe we have to be able to identify with and go through, so that later on down the road, something falls into your plate or in place. For me, I consider it the information, the research. Like I'll be led to research something, and it's just another piece to the puzzle for me. So I think we have to experience these things and see them as gifts eventually, in order to use that and those experiences to help others. And that's kind of what I want to do now.
For us.
What's that?
I feel like, and sometimes those gifts, air quotes, of like, those shitty moments where you're like, okay, one day this is going to pay off. It's also the realization that sometimes it doesn't pay off. It's not for us. It's not the gift that we're going to receive. It's going to be our next generation, or, like, okay. And as a parent, that is helpful for me, of being like, when I'm going through something and being like, okay, this really sucks, but I can go like, but what is my kid learning from this? What am I breaking in those 14 DNA lineages? And so,
absolutely. And that's exactly, so you must be reading my mind, because here's the deal. This is really known as the neurobiology of disease now in the last
amygdala, like the fear,
this connection between the emotional limbic, the amygdala, and that prefrontal cortex. So especially in the neuropsychiatric realm, this is the two most areas that are studied in communication as far as long-term illnesses. So here's what I feel this is where I feel ultimately as my, I don't know, my gift and my purpose, I guess, is to talk about this and be very open and help others to realize where they might be stuck in their amygdala, so that they can break the chain like you are with your kids, and not pass it on, because we know that this is a huge role in the prenatal period and the early years of life. So if we can help our kids break those chains, and if we can break our chains ourselves, think of how we can spin the future generations. Like, you freaking can change the neuropsychiatric realm of depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia, a lot of these things. Do you see how cool that is?
Yes. Has there been any, I'm sure there's been research like on people who are dealing with some of these long-term illnesses, severe mental health issues, is their amygdala bigger? Like,
yes, you got it. Yes.
Huge.
Because, okay, it's like a muscle.
Grow bigger. Oh, it's a muscle. Shoot.
No, think of it. It's like a muscle. So if you're a weightlifter wanting to go to the Olympics, okay, and you're not going to go to the gym once a week, right? You're going to go and you're lifting heavy weight, and you're making those muscles bigger, stronger. That which we pay attention to, that which we exercise, gets bigger. If our thoughts are constantly being driven to that brain bully, okay, and we constantly are living in a state of fear and anxiety and this mantra in our head, that becomes bigger.
Wow. Like literally.
They've done, yes.
Can it get smaller?
If we can be conscious and mindful and bring that balance back.
Can the prefrontal cortex be bigger? Have they measured that? Like, do some people?
I haven't seen anything on that. Well, okay. The amygdala has actually been, it's like an almond shaped place in the brain. It's like an almond. Okay. We have one on the right and one on the left. So they've actually been able to see that get bigger, where they've seen circuitry, connections in the prefrontal cortex weaker, not necessarily the volume wise getting bigger or
stronger. Yeah.
Yeah. So my message, I think I want that after all this craziness, hopefully you guys followed us. I know it's kind of, anyway, is take some time. And sometimes silence is, you hear the most in silence, in times of silence. They say silence is golden, but have some time to yourself. And especially after this year, have some time to yourself. Try to get back to your, what I say, flaw-authentic self. We all got flaws, right? Ain't nobody gonna be perfect. And by the way, you guys, if you are younger in practice, or anybody out there, if anybody ever tells you that they've never made a mistake or that they've got all the answers, they're lying to you. Because
you know what is like, nobody goes around saying that, but they sure as heck act it. Like, it's one of kind of my number one goals with the podcast of being incredibly vulnerable and sharing like, oh, this is where I messed up. This is like what I would have done differently. But like, yeah, I think we have way too many people in our profession and others who aren't saying, they'll say like, oh, I've made lots of mistakes. I'm never going to let you know about any of them because I'm perfect. Don't worry. Right now I'm perfect. In my past, I made lots of mistakes, but right now I'm perfect.
Exactly. And I think if you take that time and step back and you say, okay, we've all messed up. We've all made mistakes. And when we first, at least for me, when I was first in practice, I thought I had amazing mentors and I've been so blessed and so lucky. But I thought that this, from what I was told or what I even interpret by watching other practices or whatever, I thought in my head, this was right or wrong, or this was the way to do it. If you don't do it that way, you're not successful. And and so I made this reality of this is how it's supposed to be. And this is what successful is. When maybe that's not right for everybody. Find your own success, your own way of doing things, your own way of expressing yourself. Don't be afraid to say, I love you, mentor A and mentor B, or mom and dad. I love you, but that doesn't fit my model. It's too restricting for me. I don't have to.
Thank you. I'm not judging it, but that doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have a question about fear. It's so funny. Like, do you tell people that like you study fear? Like what I picture is like, have you heard of Brene Brown?
Yeah.
Okay. So like Brene Brown is like very open about the fact that like she will just shut down a room when she says like, oh, I'm a shame researcher. So like you go around being like, oh, I researched the amygdala, the part of your brain that's fear. I'm sure people are just like, don't talk to me. Don't analyze me. But my question about fear is, okay, so I kind of understand like the fear of dying, the fear of being like not having enough money, the fear of getting a disease that kills you. I understand those fears that are like, oh, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy. What the heck is up with the fears of money? The fear of having, because you said it earlier in the thing. And like, I've heard lots of people say like, you're self-sabotaging yourself. So whether it's around losing weight, if someone they're like, okay, for health reasons, I would like to lose 50 pounds and they lose 30 and they're like, and then all of a sudden what happens? They start self-sabotaging because they're afraid of getting actually what they've asked for. What is that?
Well, sometimes it goes back to because wherever we got this false message from, let's take we can do money or weight. Let's say it's weight, and let's say maybe your mom or sister or aunt or somebody that you identified with or so forth, they were unable to lose weight or overweight, and you all of a sudden start losing weight, and you subconsciously, this is a subconscious thing, right? You're afraid of showing them up or being better than them, or they won't love you anymore, or you see what I'm saying?
You do.
Okay. We sometimes are afraid of being successful because our belief system in a subconscious way has taught us that that's not what we're supposed to be. Like, I'm supposed to work 90 hours a week till I'm 91 years old and still be poor.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like if you are going to become something vastly different than you are, whether it's financially, healthier, whatever, your subconscious thinks it will have to let go of a certain reality and identity. And like, if you identify this way, like, so with money, it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like, it's like, okay, if I all of a sudden become a millionaire, I don't know that my friends will like me as much anymore. And will I have to work? Like, so if I work 40 hours a week now to make $200,000, will I have to work like 100,000 hours a week in order to make that? And then will my marriage change? And then will I still be as happy? Will I still be able to spend time with my kids? And so is all of that happening on that subconscious level of like, you a different human and you kind of like some of these stuff parts of you?
Absolutely. And also if I didn't follow the path that my parents said was reality, that means I disobeyed them. That means maybe they won't love me as much, or maybe it's I don't love them because I'm not following that rule. Are you with me?
I am, and it is my favorite thing that's come out of your mouth. Like,
so it's kind of the same thing. Backtracking, we talked about faith crisis. So a lot of people that have been raised in certain religious beliefs might say that paradigm it's not resonating with me. It's something is, but if I don't continue in that paradigm, then I am disappointing my parents, my brother, my sister, my aunts, my grandma, whatever. Okay. I have disappointed them. Does that mean I really don't love them because I'm disappointing them? Are they not going to love me? See what I'm saying?
Dualistic thinking, right? Which is like this whole other thing where it's like, if I do this differently and I'm successful, then that means I was right. And then that means my parents were wrong.
Yes. And you don't want your parents to be wrong, right? Correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
You see? And so, maybe let's say getting healthy. Maybe your mom, your whole life, your mom has struggled, or recently your mom or dad or whatever has struggled with health issues. All right. And you are like, I don't want to be like that. So you change your tune, you getting healthy, and they're declining. So it's that mismatch of, I love them, but do I maybe not, because I'm doing something totally different and I'm now healthier than they are, or I'm happier than they are. So it's always a struggle. So, it hasn't been easy for me. I'm freaking not perfect on this whole thing. I, on a regular basis, have to check in and make sure my ego is not taking over and make sure I'm coming from the right place. But I have to constantly check in, like, why are you reacting like that? Why am I reacting to a situation that way? Because if I'm reacting less than coming from a place of compassion and love and forgiveness, if I'm not coming from that place, I feel gross inside.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And I don't like to live like that. Right. Fear and anger they will kill you. And so when I'm feeling that, what's that?
Does anger come from the amygdala too?
It can. Yeah. It's your rage, dude.
Okay.
Right. All right. So if I'm coming from that place, I have to take a freaking timeout. I put myself in timeout. Mm-hmm. Monika, you're in timeout. and stay off of social media, because frick, you'll go in there you'll be in that place every day, right? So I put myself in timeout, and I have a little come to Jesus meeting with myself, and like, what is driving you to react in this way? And I have to boil it down and pare it back and peel back the onion layers and go, all right. And that's not very becoming of you, girlfriend. So what do I need to get rid of? What baggage, where am I, where have I been driven back down to in my amygdala? Mm-hmm. All right. And I have to say, wait a minute, that's not authentically who I am, or flaw authentically who I am. Mm-hmm. I have flaws, but I try to be authentic. So I have to have a come to Jesus meeting with myself and get myself back into reality, meditate, walk in nature, that will bring that prefrontal cortex back on board. Okay. That'll bring that brain buddy back on board. You can be more reasonable and say, wait a minute. All right. You're going back into your old pattern. You're that teen standing in your old bedroom. Okay. And it's it's that road that diverges, right? You can choose one or the other, whatever that saying is, right? Okay. And I remember now, oh my God, now I'm talking to you. I remember having that saying on, you guys might not remember peachy folders. I'm old. Anyway, yeah, you're going, but I remember having that saying written on there. And so when I get out of control, I take myself back, and I see myself standing there like in my teen years. And I remember that saying, and I'm like, okay, you're going down this path. That's not reality. Let's bring you back, and, let's regroup, and try to live as consciously, lovingly, whole brain. It's not that you don't poo-poo your feelings, because you have to acknowledge them. Mm-hmm. and pay attention to them, and again, acknowledge them. And I say, a lot of docs that I mentor, I say, I give yourself a 24-hour pity party. It's okay, because we all got to be there once in a while, right? But then after that, let's go for a walk. Let's do something, and then let's figure out why you got driven there and how are you going to change the circumstance. And that's what living conscious is about.
You have done, this has got to be like years and years of self-work and brain work. Where do you start? Whether it's a friend or family member or practice member that is like, all of this stuff, they would just look at you and go, you're crazy. What are you, like, they're just so like living inside this little box of not thinking about like, okay, why, the idea that they would even go like, what triggered me and what can I do about that? Where do you meet them? Where do you start this conversation with like cracking them open to like, you're on autopilot, turn on your consciousness, like, and start like being consciously living, because you can't yell that at them because they're going to be like, you crazy girl.
Craig. That's a great question. And for those of you that are healthcare providers in 30 plus years in the healthcare field, those individuals that you work with that are the hardest to help heal are those that will not recognize this. Yeah. So I have built I don't want to take credit for my practice. I think I track those individuals that are most of the time ready to take a look at that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I'm quite forthcoming with people that I call them repeat offenders. They're just like, you fix me. And I just have a come to Jesus meeting with them in a nice way. Yeah. But I explain that healing comes from many aspects, and it is, chemical, physical, emotional, trauma, toxins, thoughts, technologies, and that I can, I am your guide. I can be your guide up the mountain, because it's a mountain and sometimes you slip back a little bit, but I'll try to be like your safety rope, right, to help you. But you have to also be willing to start climbing the mountain, even if it's 1 foot at a time, and look at these ugly rocks that might appear boulders as you're going up that mountain. And I also work with other practitioners in my area that help with the mindfulness and so forth. But it is, back when I was naive on this whole thing and started reading books and, all this, I thought, oh my God, okay, I conquered one level. Yes, I'm there. I got this, man. I just hucked a bunch of shit. I slayed my amygdala. I'm good. And when like a month or a year later, you're like, hey, guess what? Next level.
Yeah, I've had that. I have had that for sure. Where you're like, oh my gosh, I think that I have healed through my body image, just more like, and then like the next month, like the most shame I've experienced in an entire year, just all the day.
You're like, what? I did all that work for what? But there's a couple good books that I recommend for my practice members and friends and stuff. The Body Keeps Score is one of them. When the Body Says No.
I bought that book. That's a hard book to read. That is dense.
I love to read neuroscience and neurodevelopment and nerdy stuff like that. So I do really better on those kind of things on Audible, actually.
Oh, I can see that. Mm-hmm.
And I can walk. I'm a big nature person. We have a nature deficit disorder these days. We need, nature is very healing. But I recommend that if you're the other one that is really good is, I think it's called The Serenity Code. It's a newer book and it touches on stuff that's happened over this year because, face it, I've been driven more into my amygdala this year. Everybody has, right? So you kind of have to be in the right mindset to receive the information.
Yep.
So
that's the
you
thing.
You might not want to start on those or listen to those. Like if you were just in an argument with somebody or you just listen to the news or whatever. Don't listen to the news, guys. Just the news is just.
I know. I think I woke up my mom about the news because we don't watch the news in our house. Like I get the important information gets through. I hear we're in a pandemic.
Yeah. We get the highlights.
But we were down visiting them and like at night and my kids are around like, to me, like that adds more like, oh my God, don't expose it. And they turn on the nightly news and I'm like, oh, no. Can we watch something different? Like, and they're like, what? We watch the news every night. I'm like, every night? Are you crazy? Like, and I feel like at first, she had no idea, like, you don't watch the news. And now I feel like she's like, yeah, it's like real negative. And I'm like, yeah, it like hurts to listen to. Mm-hmm. It hurts to like, just like, ugh. So it's just, it's gross. It's really gross.
Yeah. So we need to be, and that's, I think a lot of what we need to be conscious of over this as, one of the things I'm worried about is, how when you've been under a significant stressor, somebody in the family's sick or passes away, or like you get through that period of time and you go like, oh man, I can't believe how well my body held up. Uh-huh. Like, and then, a month later or whatever, it's boom.
Yes. What happens?
And so that's kind of what I'm afraid of here. And the other thing we have to be mindful of is just like growing up, if you've been listening to the instructions in the news significantly over however many months now, your brain has created some form of reality, whatever that is for you. Okay. And when things shift again and you're not hearing what we should and shouldn't do every night, like, are you with me? It's not being said every night. And all of a sudden might be pulled away. Mm-hmm. Some people won't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because they're not having it confirmed by an outside source, right? You with me?
Yes. I never even thought about that.
My concern is, so it's just like growing up, if your parents are giving you what's right, what's wrong, what's right, what's wrong all the time, and then you're out on your own, you're like, oh, what's right, what's wrong? How? And it creates anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what if I make this decision? Am I letting my parents down? Because what would they say? What's right or what's wrong? But this is the decision I really want to make, but it creates anxiety because nobody's telling me what's right or what's wrong anymore.
Okay, so my brain easily goes to conspiracy theories. I almost have to like avoid them because my brain is too easily like hooked in. But like, okay, so you bring this up of like every night we've tuned in to go like, okay, is it safe to get together with friends yet? No, not yet. Okay. And this, I don't like shaming or judging. So like this,
no, I don't want, no.
Receiving or who's actually doing this is more. No. Okay. And then we tune in of like, okay, we're allowed to get together at 25% capacity, 6 people indoor and this and that. And there's like all these rules, but it is easy for my brain to go, oh my gosh, yeah. What are people going to do when that's not there? But who says that the government wants that to not be there? Like, it's a very wonderful position of like, great, now you're just looking to us on a daily basis to go like what you should do with your businesses, what you should do with your grandparents, what you should do with your health, what you should do with like your girl, like how you should shop, how you should move. And it's like, oh, you're right. That's real creepy. We're going to,
so when the rug is pulled out, I'm concerned. And again, I understanding, I think one of the 2 things here, I think we have to come from a place of compassion and love of like, this, whoever we have 10 people in the room, those are all their own individualized realities. And so we have to understand that. Okay. And no shaming, no bullying, no, none of that. Okay. Please. None of that. I don't want that to be. My concern is because it can shift us again right into that fear monger and anxiety and depression and PTSD. And then from a physiological standpoint, your hormones will be off, your blood sugar is off, your neurotransmitter, your brain chemicals, everything gets dysregulated. That is the basis of disease. Mm-hmm. So my concern is when this gets pulled out, like, are we going to have a lot of people? We've seen the suicide rates and we've seen these things skyrocket. What's going to happen there? What you with me?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it comes from both sides of, like I said, where I don't even allow myself. That is something I've trained because my big amygdala will happily go like, oh, it's a conspiracy. And I have to go like, no. I have to believe that people are good and like compassion. But I see people on both sides. So we've talked a lot about like fear of the disease. There's a whole group of people who are like, probably their amygdala is driving them from a different thing in this of like, you're trying to take all of my control. And it's like, oh, both of you just, okay.
Because in either side, I know the viewers can't see this, but in either side, it's like you're fighting fire with fire because this is a little hand puppet of the brain. The amygdala is in here, this dude right here. This is your prefrontal cortex. This guy puts the brakes on here. Hey, this is not your reality. So everybody's walking around like this, both prefrontal cortex is flipped off and they're facing each other, amygdala. Whatever your belief system is, it doesn't matter. You with me? So nothing can get accomplished because I believe this, and we make, back to the first thing I was talking about, we make every decision in life based on our emotions. Why do you think realtors say, don't get, especially now, right, with the real estate market, don't get emotionally attached to a house? Because what sells the house? You get emotional. You walk into this house and you go, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And I can see my couch there and my kid's bedroom there. And oh, this happy family. And I've created this emotional attachment to the house. And that'll sell me. Oh, it's $50,000 over my budget, but I have this emotional feeling to this house. So I'm going to go for it anyway. We do things based on our emotion. So when you have both sides, different paradigms of view where they can only attach to that emotional thread, you can't accomplish things because nobody now is being reasonable, rational, controlling their impulses, being able to listen and be human and say, I understand your point of view. Okay. I know that we need to address that. How can we address this together, as a team, as a society? So there you have the amygdala.
Oh my gosh. One last question. It might be a quick one. So you talked about, so you've mentioned multiple things of like activating the prefrontal cortex. Mindfulness versus meditation, are they the same?
Mindfulness, meditation, yoga, anything that makes you have to feel your body.
Okay.
That makes you have to I do Pilates.
Right now type of thing.
Because I do Pilates work, because I have to focus. I have to mentally focus and engage my prefrontal cortex. That's going to engage my muscles and where I am in space and how to move properly doing XYZ exercise. So anything where you can feel even if you start with, I just want to feel my feet on the floor. What do my feet feel like on the floor? And get back into your body. And feel
an adjustment. You said chiropractic.
Oh, well, of course, chiropractic, because chiropractic care, my dear friend, and in my eyes, the most profound neuroscientist researcher in our field is Dr. Heidi Harvick out of New Zealand. And we are very good friends, and we teach together. So she's, I guess I do have to give her some credit for even expounding on my amygdala connection. So she has shown that the chiropractic adjustment affects how we process our world, and it helps. It's in the prefrontal cortex that we see that stimulus after the adjustment.
Really?
So yeah,
scientifically proven. Oh, I mean, and innately we knew it, but it's.
So then I like to advocate things on top of that to keep that on board. There's another thing that I've gotten. People give me a joke about is the vagus nerve.
Oh yeah.
So I've been talking about that for close to 20 years now. So people used to make fun of me. Oh, Buerger, she loves that vagus nerve. Shit, she can talk about the vagus nerve again. And now it's like the big thing in all health paradigms. So that prefrontal cortex basically is helping the regulation of that nerve, that calm.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because I probably would have had that question later of like, well, wait a minute, how does the vagus nerve fit into all this? So prefrontal cortex first stimulates vagus nerve.
That's where the vagus nerve is housed, so to speak. So it brings us on board. So I like to tell people, okay, I know it's painful. I know it's hard to look in the mirror and say, this is something that's programmed in me. How do I deal with this? Maybe I'm not what people said I was all along, meaning I am okay. I'm like, I can be successful, and that really isn't going to let people down. I'm not flaunting myself. You know what I mean? I can, so it's recognizing one little pebble at a time, I think, and just saying, okay, I'm going to work on this pebble and crush it, and so eating healthy, being more vibrant, getting adjusted, being out in nature, doing meditate, whatever your bag of chips is, whatever resonates with you, journaling, but just start a little bit at a time, but be willing to look at your authenticity.
Yeah, at the dirty stuff.
At the dirty stuff. But if you look at the dirty stuff, you can polish a stone, right?
Yeah. Heck yeah. You become such a shinier human. You're willing to.
And if you're willing to say, I haven't been stellar in some situations, but I try to learn from it. And I go back to my core. What is that little girl saying that was programmed? And that's why I reacted to a situation that didn't really have to be my reality.
Mm-hmm. Didn't have to. Oh, thank you so much. Can you please tell people first of all, what are you reading right now? I know you said, I also know I said I gave you one more question, but I think I've asked 3 more since then. So
you don't want to see my office right now. I have, in the last several years, I have transitioned more out of books into research. So neuroscience, neurodevelopment, neuropsychiatry, neurophysiology. So I love pulling down research on all this and seeing how it all fits together. Okay. Can I say one more thing? Just one more, and then I'll shut up.
You're going to have a timeline. Yeah.
Okay. Here's the cool dilly wop. Couple cool dilly wops. They've shown that about a third of women that during their childbirth experience have experienced a PTSD, a traumatic experience around the birth process. Okay. And especially during this last year, even more so. So postpartum depression oftentimes may not be postpartum depression. It's actually more of a PTSD response.
Oh.
Okay. Because PTSD, think you're driven into that amygdala. So now your whole neurochemistry is off. Your hormones are going to be off. Your blood sugar is going to be off. Your brain chemicals called neurotransmitters, all that gets dysregulated. Okay. All right. So that's step number 1 is we need to be mindful of that. But you want to hear something freaking fun?
Yes.
There was another recent report that came out in the last couple of months and in a neuroscience journal that said they did a study on police officers. And they said that those that had increased resiliency, they used the word resiliency in this paper, they had increased resiliency in that prefrontal cortex prior to the trauma. They did not end up with PTSD. So let's break that into bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. If they had increased resiliency of the prefrontal cortex, a stronger working prefrontal cortex.
How did they measure that?
They looked at neural circuitry. They did fMRIs.
Okay. Like literally, there are more connections, there are stronger connections. Yes. Yeah. So it wasn't like they answered a survey. How stressed do you feel?
Yeah. Okay. If they were exposed to a traumatic event as a police officer, they did not experience long-term a PTSD event. So here's the moral of the story. If we think about it, if you raise your kiddos, if you break the cycle, and you're doing this already because you did that yesterday or this morning, whenever that little tidbit with your husband was, okay, you were able to consciously tap into your prefrontal cortex and say, okay, amygdala, you didn't know you were doing this, but you were. Okay, you shut up. I need to leave the situation so that I don't respond in an inappropriate manner, which I might regret for a long time. And I'm going to decompress, and then I'm going to come back as a whole human being, right? Mm-hmm. If we can do that, you are breaking this intergenerational hand-me-down for generations to come. So if we can get this message out and just take those last 2 papers I talked about back at the one paper that showed that women from a childbirth experience, a third of them experienced a PTSD paradigm. That was in 2010. Fast forward to this last year, which we have some research papers coming out showing that's massively increased. Okay. And then you mirror that paper with the one that said, if there was increased resiliency, a stronger working, higher executive functioning prefrontal cortex, they didn't experience a PTSD thing.
Yeah.
Think about how we can help educate and lay the foundation for generations to come.
I mean, it completely changes the goals of prenatal chiropractic.
And that's where it's so hard, where it's like, I don't know how to just drop that into my patients of like, yep, we're going to be aligning the pelvis. So optimal birthing outcomes. And also I'm going to give you more prefrontal cortex resiliency. So you're less likely to experience a traumatic birth and therefore less likely to have postpartum depression. They're going to be like, girl, you can open a crack pipe or something. We're like, no, there's research that proves it.
But Heidi and I just finished a 6-week mentorship program. And that's what we did for chiropractors. We taught them how to come from what we call brain-based chiropractic model and how to exactly do that in practice. So we can pivot the conversation and pivot our practices from pain to brain.
Oh my God.
And I do that in my Developing Minds program too. I think you know about that. Our Developing Minds program, that's exactly where I come from preconception care and all of this stuff through early adolescence or late adolescence, early adulthood. And if we can just tweak a few pebbles, right?
How do other professions receive this research?
Well, funny thing is I'm weird. And so I read from all these other different fields, right? From neurodevelopment field and neuroscience and neurophysiology and neuropsychiatry. And then I marry them all together because for me, the underlying message is always, well, of course that makes sense for a chiropractor, right? Chiropractors know it, right? Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is a few weeks ago, I was at a conference and it was a multidisciplinary conference. I was the only chiropractor, they were all MDs and researchers. Okay. And I was speaking there and I've gotten several calls and messages after that asked from other professionals, other fields saying, we need you on our team. We want to talk to you. We want you to do webinars. Because if we understand, and I don't expect people to be, up at 2 a.m. reading a paper that I just totally fall in love with and go, oh my God, this is amazing. I like to break it down and paraphrase it. Okay, this is how we use it. This is how we use it. Okay. Sorry. I had to get that out. Sorry, guys. But if we can make inroads with these other groups, they want to hear what we have to say. And they were very intrigued. They were like, oh my gosh, what? Chiropractic's about the nervous system and the brain? I'm like, yeah. But I pulled all this other research together and presented this. It was an natural immunity conference. So I think I'm very hopeful. And with the research we have going on, I think that this whole crap storm really can help us shine the light and be the light, the truth, and the hope for future. And I think we can really be heard by other professionals. And I'm working on that behind the scenes. So I think I know that we are going to be okay, and we're going to come out of this with a new perspective for others.
I love that, and I believe you. I love your passion and like your knowledge, and yeah, I believe you. So
that's what we have to believe in.
Okay, yeah.
Tell people where to find more of you, because you said it's not on social media.
I'm on social media only but I don't post any. I want to try to lift the world up. So I have 2 teaching programs. One is called Developing Minds. And our mission in that program is to prevent dis-ease in the unborn child, to promote optimal development for the newborn, and create a life of optimal wellness for all. That's our mission. And that's Developing Minds. You can go to DevMindsU, DevMindsu.com. And I also have a program that's a lot less intense. And that is called Intersect for Life. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. All right, sheSlayers. Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Thank you again so much, Dr. Monika.
You are amazing, by the way. You're beautiful. If you guys haven't seen her, she's gorgeous. She's Whoa.
I'm all over social media, so they've seen enough of me. They're like, yeah, we've seen it.
You glow. You're beautiful.
All right, this is where I awkwardly go like, oh, compliments, I'm running away. No.
No.
Okay, so we're going to end this now before she says any more nice things. No, thank you. So, all right, She Slayers, until next week, bye.